Alrighty, good evening. It's good evening where I'm at. I don't know where it is where you're at, but it's evening here at my shop, and it's time. It's time to start putting this little Chinese bike back together. Uh, this is an oil crankcase, one half of it, the one we're going to start on. And the first thing I'm going to do to start putting this thing back together is there's a timing gear. And it just kind of helps keeps the the timing plane, the timing chain from skipping time, getting off course, getting off the gear. So that's what this is for. It's kind of like a timing chain guide. So what I'm going to do is put this right here. And then you screw it in from this way, like that. I greased that real good so that it would spin when the engine first starts up. It might not have a whole lot of lubrication right when the engine first starts up, so it's good to grease it. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a pair of pliers. Hold this. One thing I forgot to mention is the timing chain guide that I'm installing right now also helps operate the oil pump. So it's a very important piece of equipment that you do not want to forget. Get that on there good and tight. I think that should just about do it. Alrighty. Now the timing gear is right how it should be. Next, ooh man, big kahuna. Got the crankshaft next. You know what? I'm gonna put my little thing right here. Keep it from going into the engine when I don't want it to. All right, next up, we're moving along. Cooking with fire here. Next up is the transmission. Okay, so we have the transmission here. Now, don't forget, oh, here we go. Don't forget about this little washer. A little washer there. Make sure it hasn't fallen off. Make sure it looks like this. Make sure this thing goes back and forth. These little dogs go back and forth the way they're supposed to. Now these dogs on this side are solid. They don't move. Only this moves. So just make sure that goes back and forth the way it does. And then we have the shift drum. We have the shift drum. Make sure on the shift drum you don't lose any of these pins. There's pins right there. There's 5 of them. Make darn sure you don't lose any shift pins. Alrighty. Let's see if we can slide this into place where it goes. Alright. Seems like that's in place good. Let me go grab the other transmission gear. Okay, so here I'm making sure that all the shims, the gears, the dogs all match up. Gotta check and recheck again. You do not want to put this transmission back together and have it be wrong, and then you go to test ride your bike and you're jammed in one gear and you can't get out of first gear or you can't get out of second gear. So check, and recheck. And for those of you who are wondering, yes, I have done that. My XT225 Yamaha, when I split the motor on it and rebuilt it from the ground up, I put it all back together and it was jammed in one gear. And I had to take it apart and figure out what I had done wrong. And you know what I found out when I took it apart? It didn't seem like there was anything wrong with it at all. I think what had happened is I was not gentle. I jammed it in. I didn't make sure it fit perfectly. And voila, my project was a do-over. Okay, here I'm showing you how the Kickstart works. It has a shim washer that rests on top. As it slides down, it goes up against a hog ring that snaps into a groove. The hog ring does not move, but the shim does. Make sure that shim's on there. The hog ring holds the spring in place that makes the Kickstart function properly. You can see a little indentation there off to your left of the Kickstart shaft. It has a high side and a low side. Make sure the Kickstart goes up against and rests upon the low side of that that apparatus. I'm not real sure what to call it. That little thing that my finger's on, my index finger is on this little apparatus, and the Kickstart will spin around until it makes contact with the low side of that apparatus, and that's where it rests. Here I am still just moving the gears, moving the Kickstart, moving everything back and forth, checking, rechecking, double checking, just making sure that everything works together, nothing's jammed. All right, earlier I told you that the one transmission didn't have a shim, and I was wrong. I had misplaced it, and so both of those transmission shafts have shims on the ends. and you can't mix them up because the one shim only fits on the smaller shaft and the larger shim only fits on the larger shaft. So you can't hardly mix those up, so that's good. So alrighty, here we got 2 dowels. My hands are on the 2 dowels, shows you where they're at. And you need to have those dowels there or the crankcases won't match up together perfectly. So those dowels will make sure everything's a good tight fit. I speeded up the film so that you don't have to watch me put on gasket maker for 20 minutes. I do have a gasket, but I just like using gasket maker as a insurance policy that the engine doesn't leak. So that's what I'm doing right now. I'm putting on gasket sealer, and then I'm going to put on the gasket. And then once I put on the gasket, I'll put on another thing of gasket sealer, and then I will join the 2 crankcases together and bolt them down. Okay, here we are. We got the oil crankcase. We're gonna set it back down on the, reconnect it to the engine. Gonna do some tapping with my little rubber mallet. Just try to evenly and gently tap it down into place. This is not the time to be swinging like a He-Man. Just little tiny taps so that it evenly goes down and falls into place. Now, when I got my little piston protector there in the front of the motor, made that out of wood. Now, putting the bolts down. The bolts are pretty much all the same size, so that made it kind of easy. And same thing with the bolts, just gentle, evenly, torque it down nice and evenly. Don't get on one bolt and torque it down real hard and then go on to the next. No, you put all the bolts in and snug them up first, and then gently, one by one, you go around and snug them up more and more and torque them down a little more and a little more. I'm going to torque these laters to make sure they have specific torque settings on them. Matter of fact, when I do that too, I'm going to add some red Loctite to the bolts too. But right now, for instructional purposes in the video, I'm just going to do these bolts up by feel. Okay, here I am putting the pins. They had fallen out of the shift drum. I'm going to put the pins back, and then I'm going to put the little keeper cap, screw it down so that the pins won't fall out anymore. I'm going to tap that down with the impact screwdriver. Make sure those shift drum pins never come out. So this is the progress that we've made today. We put the 2 crankcases back together, so we actually got a lot accomplished. The transmission, the piston, the crankshaft, it's all in there. And this motor is starting to look like an engine again, instead of just a pile of parts that I ripped to shreds. And so anyways, I'm really excited about that. Please like, share, and subscribe my videos. Help my channel to grow. Get me, I'm working toward 1,000 subscribers. That's what I'm hearing. That's the magic word. Once you get 1,000 subscribers, your channel can really start growing after that. So that's what I'm shooting for right now. 1,000 subscribers. And this is Billy Does Motorcycles signing off.